morning. Chairwoman Attenker.
Here.
Member Gizmo.
Present.
Member Cummings.
Present.
Executive Director Miguel Nunez.
Present.
Legal Counsel Ray McCarthy. Present. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Today, we are meeting for the Legislative Committee. And in our agenda, the first item is the committee may discuss and vote upon this attached election legislation to be submitted by the Board of Elections to the General Assembly. And so this piece, the first piece, comes after discussion at the full board meeting from Commissioner Jacoponi. Added some changes from some feedback that we, I think, collectively provided him. However, and I'd love to share this with the rest of the committee, it is April 1st, and we are technically out of the range in which the legislature takes any bills unless they are given with sort of permission or from either the Speaker of the House or the Senate President. And this while we have some changes, this committee would have to review it, make any edits or changes that may be necessary, and then go through the board. That would take us to the middle of April, which then we have a break in April. It's April break, and for those who are aware, that's when things really pick up at the State House. So I'm saying this because I wanted to ask the other two members how they feel if we push reviewing this until after session, so that we can share with the commissioner that introduced it, to give him more time to review it, to gather more information for all of us, and that we can have more time before the session. Otherwise, this is sort of not only gonna die, but we're also going to have our executive director have to sort of leverage some of the relationships and work that we do at the State House for this bill. So I just wanted to share that out there.
I'm comfortable with tabling it until beginning of next session.
Yeah, I mean, we could just tell the whole board that's what we think.
Okay.
That it should be moved over, so we haven't given it any consideration one way or the
Okay.
other at this point.
Perfect. So we would
I'll make that motion if you want.
I would love that. Yes.
To move it to the meeting of the board, which is next week, which is next Tuesday, with our recommendation that we basically iron out the difficulties that we've seen,
After
and
session.
that it goes to the next session, and the full board can then decide if they want to do that or not.
Okay. So we would just be sharing with them, just to clarify, the motion is to inform them that we're asking.
That we're
Got
asking
it.
them to push it off to the next
Perfect.
session, based,
Okay.
based upon public comments,
Mhm.
what we've received in our own review.
Yeah, perfect. Second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Hi.
All right. And the second item is the committee will discuss and vote upon campaign finance and election legislation bills submitted by other persons and entities at the General Assembly. Miguel, are you sharing with us a little bit?
Yes, members of the board, before you today, I have 22 bills in order to present to you. Now, of those 22 bills, only 8 are actually new bills that the board members have not seen previously. The remaining bills are bills that the board, both the subcommittee and the board have voted upon their companion bills. So in such cases, I will note that as I go through it, so you can be aware that it is a companion bill. And I'll note what the original vote from the board was on its companion was. So the first bill on your list here is Senate Bill 0513, which is presented by Senator Patalano, would increase the maximum number of voters that a polling place can accommodate from 3,000 to 3,500. This was voted upon the House Bill 5517 was voted upon with support from the board at a previous meeting held on February 12th. So the board did vote to support the companion bill for this already.
So do we have?
I move to support this bill as well.
Perfect. Any second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0517 introduced by Senator Mack. This act would allow citizens of a city or town who are at least 16 years of age to register to vote and to vote in school committee elections in municipalities where school committees are elected entities. The board voted on March 24th on the companion bill, House Bill 5382, to have no position on this bill.
Do we have a motion on this bill?
Move that we take no position.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0520, introduced by Senator Bissilione. This act would modernize and streamline the existing process for getting on the permanent mail ballot application list. This bill was voted originally back on February 12th. The City and Town Clerks Association, if you recall, Mike Narducci was here to present these bills, and the board did vote to support the language. This is actually the actual bill number. So you have Senate Bill 0520 and its companion, House Bill 5709. Essentially removes the notarization process for the application to get on the permanent mail ballot application list. So this is not to actually receive a ballot, it's just to get on the list to receive an application to apply for a ballot. The board did vote to support that language at that meeting on February 12th.
I'll move to support both the Senate and the House bill as enumerated by the director.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0521, introduced by Senator Burke. This act would require the respective party chairpersons to submit lists of party voters to the mayor or council president, as the case may be, within 30 days of notice or vacancy in a municipal office, which would require the mayor or the council president to make a nomination for a replacement to the council within 30 days of receipt of the list. It also clarifies the term, expiration dates for canvassing authorities, members and alternates, and would direct the city or town clerk to make immediate corrections if the term expiration dates on record are found to be in non-compliance with the provisions of the act. The act would require the local canvassing board to designate a chief local election official for that designee to designate an alternate local election official. It would further establish that the chief local election official is the only agent authorized to request user access to the statewide central voter registration database via the Secretary of State. I want to congratulate Nick Lehman because that is the longest description I've ever read in a piece of legislation to date. So I'm surprised they allowed that so long, but the board did vote to support the language of this bill back on February 12th. This is the City and Town Clerks Association bill, which was again presented by Mike Narducci on their behalf. And the companion bill from the House is 5312. So the board did vote to support this language.
Do you have a motion?
I'll move to support.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0522 by Senators McKinney. This act would require all write-in votes, regardless of qualification, to be reported and published by the State Board of Elections on its website. It would also require the local Board of Canvassers to adjudicate write-in votes in any contest where the total number of write-in votes cast may affect the outcome. The board did vote on February 12th to support the language included in this bill. And the companion House bill is 5516 to this Senate bill. And again, the board did vote to support it.
I'll move support.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0524, introduced by Senator Quesada. This act would require that the state use the actual residences of persons in government custody for redistricting purposes. Such information would be collected by the Department of Corrections and forwarded to the Division of Statewide Planning to be utilized for redistricting. The board did vote on House Bill 5538, which is the companion bill, on March 4th, and the board had no position.
I'll move the same, that we take no position.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0541 introduced by Senator Laria. This act would increase from 7 days to 9 days the period of time in which a request for a recount of the votes cast can be made to the Board of Elections. No certificates of election may be issued until the recount, if any, is completed. This is a companion bill to House Bill 5384, which the board voted to support on March 4th, 2025.
Move support.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next bill is Senate Bill 0569, introduced by Senator Zuria. This act would add early voting to the 50-foot buffer prohibitions against politicking on election day voting. The board did vote to support the companion bill, House Bill 5084, on March 4th, 2025, and that vote was again for support of the companion bill.
I'll move to support.
And
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0729 by Senator Tukoyan. This act would consider election officials and poll workers public officials for the purposes of prohibition on making threats to public officials. This act was, this bill, or the language for this bill, prior to having a number, was presented to you by Secretary Maury on February 12th. And it is a companion bill to House Bill 5300, and the board did vote to support it.
Move to support.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0741. This act would amend several statutes relating to elections and the dates for primaries and dates within which to file nomination papers and object to nomination papers. Again, this bill was presented to you, the language of this bill was presented to you by Secretary Maury on February 12th. It is a companion bill to House Bill 5381, and the board voted to support it.
Any motion?
I'll move to support.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0816. This is a bill that the board has not reviewed previously for this session. This act would create the deceptive and fraudulent synthetic media in election communications chapter to regulate the use of synthetic media in elections. This is presented, this bill is being submitted by the Secretary of State. It has a companion bill in the House of H 5872, which would require approval as well. And the staff's position on this is to support as it was last legislative session.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, and we have to go back to another one top that you missed, sorry. Question, one of these was already heard in one of the chambers? Was it the House version that was already heard?
Yes.
Okay, were you there?
Yes, I believe I was, yeah.
So this is one that we have to take a position on.
I'm pretty sure we had this come before us last year too. Is that correct?
Yes, and the board voted to support it as well.
Support. Yes.
Are there any
I mean, I
questions?
think it's the same bill. too.
Yeah. I'll move to support.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think we might have skipped
Did we
eight.
skip 815?
Yeah, 815, yeah.
Oh, so 815, we're not going to consider that to board bill. So the board
No.
authorized us to submit that already, so
Got it.
that's our bill.
Great, okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
We were being very organized. You threw us off.
Next on this page is the Senate Bill 0819, which is an act that would require the local board of canvassers to publish early voting dates, hours, and location at least twice in the newspaper of general circulation within the city or town, and to publish the same on the municipality's website for the duration of the in-person early voting period. It would also permit the substitution of advertising the voter registration deadline in the newspaper by continuously posting notice of designation on the municipality's website for a designated period of consecutive days leading up to the last day prescribed by law for the taking of voter registrations. This bill the companion bill was voted on the language was presented to you on February 12th by Mike Narducci for the City and Town Clerks Association. The House bill is 5518. That's the companion bill to this Senate Bill 0819. And the board did vote at that February 12th meeting to support the language presented by the City and Town Clerks Association.
I'll move to support the language on this as well.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is Senate Bill 0820, introduced by Senator DeMario. This joint resolution would propose to the voters of the state a constitutional amendment which would remove the 30-day state and local residency requirement and require that a voter be registered by or on election day. It would also provide that no person would be eligible to file a declaration of candidacy who has not been a qualified elector in Rhode Island for at least 30 days. This bill, the board did hear on February 12th. It's a Secretary of State bill, and the board did vote on that date to support the language in the bill.
I'll move to support.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The final Senate bill here is Senate Bill 0907, introduced by Senator Thompson. This redefines political party and defines and distinguishes between major parties and minor parties based on the number of votes a party's candidate received in the previous election. This is the first time the committee or the board is viewing this legislation. In terms of the staff's position, the staff has no position on this bill.
I mean, I don't think we've taken a position on something like this in the past
Yeah.
because it's establishing parties. I think you just leave it to the legislature.
Yeah.
It's up to what the rest of the committee thinks.
So,
Yeah, no, I
I
agree.
agree.
And that was my initial
Yeah.
reaction reading it.
Yeah, I don't understand. Yeah, this isn't, I don't think this would be,
More of a
Something,
policy
yeah.
than anything else. I'll move to take no position.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Now on to the House bills. The first bill is House Bill 5708, introduced by Representative Fascia. This act would allow automatic voter registration for Rhode Islanders applying for hunting and fishing licenses, like the procedures in effect for applicants to the Division of Motor Vehicles. This bill has not been heard by the board previously, and the staff has no position on this bill. I don't know if the Secretary of State's office would be administering this. Do you have any, I don't know if you want to ask any input from the Secretary of State's office, on-
comments?
but we don't have any position on it.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. Rob Rock with the Secretary of State's office. We support this bill. It's not our bill, but we do support it. It essentially would create the same exact process at DEM as we have at DMV, where you would automatically be registered to vote if you come in contact by getting a fishing or a hunting license. It does, the thing that we like about it is that I think 300,000 people since 2020 have interacted with DEM. Doesn't mean there's going to be 300,000 new voters. It's just going to mean that it's another touch point with a voter in their government to keep their information updated. And we have to work with the DEM to ensure a smooth transition should this bill pass. But we think this is a good bill for voterless maintenance and for voters to be registered quicker and to allow people to have information much quicker than they do now.
Yeah.
I just have a question, Madam Chair. Rob, are you aware of what media is going to be used to take the signatures?
So if they mirror what happens at the DMV, it's a touchpad, much like there is at a
DMV.
Stop and Shop or a grocery store. So we believe that's what they would do, but the DM has not even looked into this yet. So this is going to be a long process. It took the DMV several years to implement that information, and there is federal funds available to help implement that.
I was hoping they were going to have paper.
So we could read the signatures?
It
Yeah.
makes it a little easier for us to
I
see the
agree.
signatures, but that
I
was
would assume it's the same
yeah,
technology.
that was my only question.
Should be part
If it
of
was
our
If it was
testimony.
different technology or not.
Can I ask then, just, is it, so in reading it, does it provide the same sort of protections and requirements that the original one did at the DMV?
Yeah, so
Just
the
with
law
data,
is
things like that.
exactly the same.
Perfect.
They copied it word for word from
That's
the
great.
DMV law.
That's awesome. Any questions?
No questions. I'll move to support.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Did you, yes, we got excited. It's people registering to vote.
We also support.
Thank you, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
That's the kind of clout you have. You didn't even have to
That's
say
right.
anything. You just
You
sat at the
down,
table.
yeah. We said, well, if Nick approves of it, then thank you.
Did the vote happen? I didn't-
Yes,
We
it
did.
did. We all
voted.
approved it. Enthusiastic
Sorry.
approving.
Support.
We were very excited about the DEM.
All right. So on to the next bill, House Bill 5710. This act is introduced by Representative Perez. This act would reduce the number of signatures needed on nomination papers for a candidate to be a delegate to a national presidential convention to 50 votes. This act would amend and reduce the number of days before an election to which a nomination papers must be submitted before a presidential preference primary to 54 days, and would reduce the number of days by which the local board of canvassers would need to certify the signatures to the Secretary of State's office to 50 days before the presidential preference primary. This is the first time that the board, the subcommittee or the board is hearing this legislation, and the staff has no position on this particular legislation. I don't know if there's any other input from the public, but we don't have any position.
No input. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on this? I don't love that we're cutting the days, the number of days. That's never, I appreciate wanting to get it down to 50 voters, but I'm not a fan of cutting the days myself. Adding days. Am I just not looking at things? This afternoon of 50th days. They're reducing the amount of signatures, and are they not reducing also the number of days in which that you have to get the signatures? Am I not reading this
Reducing to
correctly?
54, right?
Yeah. They're also technically reducing the number of days that you have. Yeah. So it's doing both things.
The certification is going to be shorter too.
Share with us, Nick.
And the staff doesn't have a position on this?
No, it's
Miguel?
only several days, but again, that's less time
Okay.
for the local board to work on.
See, we were waiting for you to come for this one.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So Nick Lima on behalf of the Rhode Island City Clerks Association and the Cranston Board of Canvassers. Our board has not taken a position on this bill. However, I believe the Elections Committee is going to be supporting this, and I'm actually going to be asking the Clerks Association to support this because we do, in January and February of a presidential election year, see thousands upon thousands of signatures for delegates for a party office or a party right to get on a plane and fly to a national convention. So I mean, for us, reducing that requirement from 150 to 50 would significantly reduce the burden for local boards of canvassers offices, even if there's a day less or a day more. And I think it's just changing the dates. The word reduce here might be doing a lot of work. They might be just changing the calendar slightly to actually allow the candidates themselves to have more time to get the signatures, which means we'll have more time to review them because we'll be getting them over on a rolling basis. But just on the prospect of reducing what is a relatively minor office from 150 to 50 signatures, the local boards, I think, will be supportive of that conceptually, because it will, again, reduce probably by hundreds of hours around the state the amount of work we have to do at a time in January or February of a presidential election year when our city governments have other things going on. We're not really, no one's really think, oh yeah, are you guys doing elections work right now? Well, yes, we are. We're doing this process, obscure process that you don't even probably know about for delegates for the national convention. Like, oh, okay. So that would just help us.
Thank you for the clarification. Any thoughts, questions?
I mean, I never like to say we wouldn't support something that's going to be helpful to the local boards.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
That's where I.
Absolutely.
Especially it's delegates, right? I think it's a little different. So, yeah. Do we have a motion? or
I mean, I'll
comments?
move, I'm going to move support based on what the local boards, I think it directly impacts them, so.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, to support the legislation.
The next bill is House Bill 5711. This act was introduced by Representative Bryan. This act would require verification of an applicant's date of birth and either a Rhode Island driver's license number or a state identification number on all applications seeking mail ballots and emergency mail ballots. This bill is a companion bill to Senate Bill 0282. The board did vote on March 4th to oppose this bill, and I did in fact testify in opposition to this bill on the board's behalf. And again, that was voted upon by the board to oppose on March 4th for the companion bill.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move to oppose.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is House Bill 5712, introduced by Representative Edwards. This act would establish fusion voting in Rhode Island, allowing candidates to appear on ballots as nominees of political parties for the same office. The act would create comprehensive procedures for 1, cross-endorsement nominations and candidate acceptance, 2, ballot design requirements with accessibility standards, 3, vote tabulation that preserves separate party line totals while combining votes for the final results. Implementation requirements for the voting implementation requirements for voting equipment. The act would also reduce the threshold for political party qualification from 5% to 1% of votes in statewide elections. The staff position on this is no position. However, we do have a couple of notes based on research that we've done on this. It's something similar to how Connecticut, which just obtained a contract with ES&S statewide as well. And the ES&S system does support something like this being programmed. However, it could lead to longer ballots because if someone's name is listed multiple times on the ballot, for example, if a candidate was endorsed by the Republican Party and the Libertarian Party, for example, just as an example, then that would get their name on the ballot twice for a particular office. So that any votes for that individual would be counted on a scale. And if both votes were for that same individual, it's not as if they get 2 votes, they would get half a vote is generally what my research from how Connecticut does it. So that being said, the ballot could be longer due to this, and also the amount of voter education to explain why there are multiple names on the ballot would be something that we would have to undertake through both the Secretary of State's office and our office if this proposal were to pass. But yes, our equipment does technically support this. However, we think there are some challenges in terms of the implementation in the voter education portion.
I have another question. So if someone appears on the ballot, for example, you appear on the ballot 3 times, and the voter only votes for you once, you'd only get a third of the vote?
You get a full vote, but if they vote for you twice, you get a half of a vote, yes.
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Okay.
And we have the capability to do that?
The system, yes, does have the capability to do that, yes.
I'll defer to my colleagues on the committee.
Does anyone have a position on it?
Sounds very complex to
Oh,
me.
yes.
for a voter.
So yes, it's a thing. I can barely understand it.
Hi,
Welcome.
I'm John Marion on behalf of Common Cause. We don't have a position. I just want to share, I grew up in New York, and this is how New York does some state offices.
Statewide or local?
Statewide offices. So for instance, the governor's race is done on a fusion ballot. And people remember Governor Cuomo, he would appear as a Democrat in a Working Families Party. And then whoever his Republican opponent happened to be, he won multiple times against Republicans. It would be, they would appear on the Republican and the Conservative Party line. And so, the total votes for Cuomo would be regardless of if the voter casts Working Families Party or Democratic line, and the total votes for his opponent would be, regardless of if they voted on the conservative line or the Republican line. It used to be fairly common in the United States back in the 30s, and then the two major parties basically tried to get rid of these systems. And then there's some effort to bring it back in the United States. The reason it's coupled with changes to lowering the threshold for parties to get on the ballot is the idea behind this is to create an incentive system for third parties, in a system that when we have first past post elections, it's hard for third parties to get traction. So I just kind of wanted to explain that. When I was growing up, we were using shoot machines. In a shoot machine, a lever machine, you couldn't select both party lines. You could only select the one party line. That's how in New York, many jurisdictions, they use the express vote. And so that only lets you select one. Our challenge is the hand-marked paper ballot. So I just thought that would help clarify. I saw some quizzical look. I thought that might help clarify. But if you Google a fusion ballot, I think it's worth just taking a look at for your own curiosity sometime.
Thank you, John. Any questions, comments? Any thoughts? Any motions?
I mean, I don't think I'd vote against it. I'm not sure
Yeah.
I support it, though.
Yeah. Would you be?
I'll move no position.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd like to do a little more research on
Correct.
it before I formalize a position, so I'll
So we don't-
second that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like
No
to see
position.
some of the other states.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next bill is House Bill 5713, introduced by Representative Edwards. This act would prohibit members of elected city or town political party committees as well as representative Senate district committees from serving on local canvassing authorities. The staff has no position on this. However, I will note that in my experience, this has come up several times in terms of local canvassers being involved, and because generally speaking, if you think about it, local canvassers are selected because of their activity in parties, local parties, and so that is certainly something that has come up in the past where they are a member of the local political party committee, as well as being on the board of canvassers. So other than that, just wanted to provide that background information. So this proposal would prohibit that from being possible. Now, I'm not sure, and I believe, there might be some opinion coming up, but it might limit some of the abilities for the local boards to recruit boards of canvassers, because obviously that's a job that is harder and harder to recruit for. However, that's just speculation. But there probably are instances where them being on the committee is not entirely helpful sometimes with matters that come before them either. So I think there is an argument on both sides of that. But the staff doesn't have any position on whether or not the proposal should be passed or not. And I don't know if there's any input from the Secretary of State's Office of the Clerks Association on this.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So we don't have a position on this bill outright. However, the Elections Committee of the association has discussed it, and we do have concerns, which I did have a couple conversations with the sponsor, Floor Leader Edwards, about it. And I even suggested some alternative language for him to, I think, accomplish what the sponsor is looking to do with this. As Miguel noted, we do have basically a pipeline from parties to boards. Boards are appointed by a nomination list from the party chairs. Just in Cranston, 2 out of my 5 board members and alternates are currently serving as members of ward committees. So that would obviously be problematic if this were passed for us. It is getting more and more difficult to find people willing to serve on boards of canvassers around the state. I do think that personally, I think something should be looked at in the future. For instance, allowing some sort of mechanism for unaffiliated voters to serve on boards, because that's nearly half or more than half the voters in the state that can't actually serve on a board of canvassers. However, this bill, I think, kind of just goes in the wrong direction with some of that in trying to accomplish certain things that aren't necessarily going to be productive, I think, for elections administration at the local level. Again, the sponsor was very receptive to, some of the suggestions I made. I don't know if the bill will be amended or sub-8, or if it's just sort of in there for discussion purposes right now. There is a Senate companion that I'm aware of or I've seen yet. But just as far as the Clerks Association go, we have no position, but we do have concerns about the bill as it's currently constructed.
Thank you so much, Nick. Any questions? Comments or motions? I appreciate what Nick said. I also think, I don't know if, I think it could be more harmful than not to pass this. I think from what it sounds like. So I don't know if we can oppose it or at least at a minimum also ask for
I know on the
specific
local
amendments.
board that I served,
Yeah.
one of the members was
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 elected.
on the town committee.
Yeah.
And it was always an issue to try to
Mhm.
get people.
Mhm.
So
And I'm assuming also smaller towns too.
I don't know, I'm willing to do either.
Mhm.
What do you think, Mike?
Looking at it here, it looks like there's actually fines imposed as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I know when I served on the canvassers in Cumberland,
Mhm.
I also came from
Mm.
the local
Yeah.
party committee.
Mhm.
We had a hard time finding people. So I'm comfortable voting to, or motion to oppose this
Mhm.
legislation.
I'll
Yeah.
second the motion, because I think that fine is somewhat chilling to anybody that would like to serve.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, let's face it, it doesn't really, it's not a lucrative position, so
Yeah.
at least it wasn't in my town.
That's right.
Yeah, it's hard enough to get people.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And can I ask, would the two of you, because I'm wondering also what Nick mentioned about, I would be curious either for, as part of the legislation, sort of testimony or anything else. I wasn't aware or really realized about the nonpartisan people that are not able to, I think
Yeah.
that's a really important thing to mention as
Absolutely.
part of this. Part of why we're opposing it is this can create a big hurdle. The idea that this should do instead is open it up to a lot more individuals that we're not opening it to but now. So I'm wondering if that's something that we would be willing to add to our testimony if it's ever heard.
If you're okay with it on the motion, I'm okay with it on the
Absolutely.
second, sure.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that would be beneficial.
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
The next bill is House Bill 5873. This act will require verification of an applicant's date of birth and either a Rhode Island driver's license number or state identification number on all applications seeking mail ballots and emergency mail ballots. The board did already vote to oppose the Senate companion bill for this, which was 0282 on March 4th, 2025.
I'll move to oppose this as well.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next bill is House Bill 5874, introduced by Representative Cruz. This act would make it easier to vote for people eligible to vote who are incarcerated at the adult correctional institutions. It would also create the position of voting coordinator within the Department of Corrections to help facilitate incarcerated people who are eligible to vote from start to finish. Finally, it would authorize the Secretary of State to promulgate rules and regulations to enforce voting rights for people eligible to vote who are incarcerated at the adult correctional institution. The staff does not have a position on this bill. I will note, though, that the statute already requires voter registration at the adult correctional institution, the ACI. The board has a relationship with the staff at the ACI in order to get folks registered at discharge, at the point of discharge, whereas this bill would more proactively require the Secretary of State's office to help facilitate not only registration, but also getting a mail ballot to that individual, an application, and then the actual mail ballot, and getting that, and having that a staff member be designated by the Secretary of State's office to facilitate that portion of it. So the staff doesn't have any position on it, but I just wanted to note that we do have a current relationship with the Department of Corrections for the registration at the point of discharge.
Do we have any questions or any comments from the Secretary of State's office?
Hello, Kathy Placencia from the Elections Division at the Secretary of State's office. We did work with we do support this concept and support the voting coordinator. We do believe that it'll make it easier for people who are incarcerated to register to vote and to cast a ballot. And we did assist with facilitating this in 2024. And I believe there were about 91 people that did cast a ballot and registered to vote. So we do support the bill, but are happy to work with Representative Cruz to work out some logistics.
Any questions, thoughts, promotions? Thank you, Kathy.
Ray, on the promulgation of regulations under this, what type of regulations would you foresee the Secretary promulgating? I mean, I'm a little concerned. You've got an elected official promulgating regulations on how the ballots are going to be handled, collected, however you want to talk about the vote. So I've got a little bit of I'd like to know more about that, I guess.
I haven't really considered that question up to this point. The statute lays out a number of conditions here that I think could be, parroted or mirrored in the regulation.
Any thoughts? I think, go ahead. Commissioner, you're going to say something?
I mean, I'm not comfortable moving to support. I certainly wouldn't oppose it, but I'm not comfortable moving to support. I'll second something for discussion purposes, but I'm not comfortable making a motion to support. I haven't delved into it enough, and I think we're already talking about language changes.
Yeah.
I don't want to vote support before, like, we could see a sub-A or something like that.
Yeah. That makes sense. Commissioner?
It sounded also from the testimony that the Secretary of State's office may have some issues, because it sounded like you wanted to work out some issues with it.
Well, I mean, obviously,
Language.
handle the ballot.
Yeah. So I'll move to take no position.
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the final bill is House Bill 6092, introduced by Representative Boas. This act would make several amendments to provide for an online nomination paper portal for election nomination papers. This bill is introduced by the Secretary of State's office. The staff does support this proposal, and probably for selfish reasons,
Same.
because as you know, in the past, we have had some incidences, some of them ongoing, where individuals have signed nomination papers either for deceased individuals, allegedly, or for other individuals. And this process of an online nomination process is something that we've seen, or I've seen in my participation in conferences, something that is it's happening around the state, being proposed around the state, around the country, excuse me. And this would require an actual identification to be provided as part of that online proposal, similar to how you register to vote. You would have to provide your Rhode Island driver's license number or your state identification number in order to sign that candidate's nomination papers, albeit virtually. So I know that I did listen to testimony in the House committee on this, and there were some concerns by the panel about making it too easy for candidates to get on the ballot through this way. But the argument on the other side is that it does provide a more secure method to validate these are in fact the folks who are signing the nomination papers. And given what we've experienced over the last several election cycles with nomination papers, although we've made great strides in improving that process, I think this is just another component that would make the nomination process much more secure going forward if implemented. So the staff does support it.
Can I ask to the Secretary of State, is there going to be a Senate version? Yeah, it just hasn't come out. Okay. I asked because if, however we vote, we could testify on it. Okay. Any motions or questions?
I would move support simply because I think it's going to be difficult for that person to sign.
Yeah.
So I would move support.
Anything that makes things safer and easier. We have a second.
Modernize it. I will second.
Modernizer. All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And that concludes my presentation on legislation thus far, and I'll certainly keep you apprised if there are any significant sub-As or new pieces of legislation, but I think we're coming to the end where everything has been introduced and very few pieces are expected to come out now.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to end the meeting? Oh, okay.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.